How Success is Created, a Hypothesis. Today's talk is called How Success is Created. And so the whole idea here is I'm going to share with you a new approach to the creation of success that I've come across recently. I'm very excited about this approach. I think it's grounded, mature, strong. I think it makes sense. It's the right balance of a handful of different polarities. In other words, it's a balance of being realistic and idealistic. It's a good balance of, discipline and high-level thinking. And so it's really compact and integrated and makes sense, as I think you will also find as we go into it. And so my big, super special invitation for you now is that if you're down, if you'd like to join me in creating some success going into August, then to do this with me. Let's take this, apply it in any way that makes sense to you, and let's check back in at the end of the month and see how it went. Now, if you're watching this and it's no longer the end of July, you're watching this sometime in the future, do not fret. You can still use this and apply it to any upcoming period of time that you're going into. And if a new month is upon you, then that's perfectly good. But it doesn't have to be a month. It could be this upcoming week if you're watching this on a Sunday or a Saturday. Or it could be the upcoming year. Or even just going into a particular day. And the reason why I say this is because what I have found is that whenever you move into a period of time, whether it's a day, week, month, year, even an hour, then somewhat unconsciously, that period of time that you enter into, like once you start going into it, it is now happening within that context that you set for yourself. It's almost like you can put a lens on that period of time. You can sort of have it. It's not like you have control to make it happen in a very particular way, but it's almost like it happens within the context that you set, and that it can assist that period of time in unfolding this way as opposed to just by default, whatever it was going to do otherwise. This is a very powerful practice. Nevertheless, we're not even getting into the subject matter. There's just, this is just something to know going in. So I've tried to make this talk for you for the last 2 days. I've made many attempts at recording it, and I've I had to keep throwing it away, and I had to keep making the redoing the structure, and I think I've settled on something that works. And is there anything else to say before we dive in? No. No, aside from this, I think just that when I say the word success, I want you to accept the word success in its very broad definition. So this is not like your 1990s, business suit wearing kind of success where it's just necessarily money and fame and all these things. If you want these things, that's fine. But success, of course, meaning just whatever it means to you. You could exchange the word success for self-actualization if you want. Just, doing the stuff that you came here to do, as we often talk about on this channel, if you have been here before. Good. So now the outline is as such. I'm going to guide you through 3 basic decisions. These are things that you need to decide of. You need to get off of the fence on once and then land on one side or the other in order for us to proceed. So there are 3 of those, and then we'll do that. And then I'm going to give you a extremely mature take on magical versus practical thinking. We're going to look at this from the most truthful lens that we possibly can, and then see what we come up with as a result. And then I'm going to highlight a spiritual trap to make sure that you don't fall into. And then I'm going to cap it off with a handful of practical tips and goodies. The section is called goodies. It's stuff that you can use to implement this. It'll give you a sense of what you're actually doing so that you can come away from this talk with things in your hands. And then we'll check in at the end of the month and see how we did. And then that will be a wrap. All right, good. So without further ado, here's number 1. Number 1, decide if the universe is in relationship with you or not. To put it slightly differently, decide if your consciousness is connected to the universe at large or not. Is there a relationship? Is there a relationship between what happens in here and what goes on out there? From a materialist stance, from a rational, modernist, scientific stance, the answer is generally no, unless you get into quantum physics and this kind of thing, where they talk about how observing an experiment will affect how the experiment plays out. If you are otherwise not of the persuasion that there is a relationship between what happens out there and what's going on with your intention or your expectation or your beliefs, then this conversation is no longer relevant for you. This conversation will not make sense to you. And what we're going through, like, see, usually when we talk about this kind of thing, when I make videos about things like the law of attraction or manifestation, I often feel a little bit on my back foot, like I have to explain it to the scientific rationalist types. And in this particular case, we're not doing that. We're just going to assume that you are already in a similar place that I am, and you're willing to believe that there's a relationship between the two. Now, number two, decide if you believe in the law of attraction or of manifestation. So beyond just that simple connection between you and the universe, is there a causal relationship between the two? And so I will quickly explain what I mean by this so we can talk about what we're agreeing with or disagreeing with. So manifestation, it broadly refers to the practice of commanding something or imagining something or rearranging your beliefs or your psychology such that your life, the experience of your life, becomes a match with what you're doing in your mind. And there are a handful of different explanations. It doesn't have to be just one. There is this causal relationship where it's like, okay, I imagine it and then I receive it. There is a sort of co-arising explanation where it's like, if I think of something and then I get it out in the world, it's not because I caused it with my mind, but because there's just a connection. It's almost like the event is an emergent event and you see it both subjectively and objectively at the same time, but it's not because I caused it. It was maybe caused by something else or created in a different way. So these would be two different explanations. There may be more, but what we're narrowing down here is whether or not you believe that you can usefully use the idea of like imagining your reality and receiving something as a result of imagining something. And so the reason why we need to decide this, the reason why this is kind of like a fork in the road and we can't really proceed without having made this decision, is because if you are of a materialist bent, then you would take what people speak about when they speak about the law of attraction or of manifestation and explain it in terms such as confirmation bias and the filtering of the subjective mind so that you're just kind of seeing what you want to see and explaining it in the way that you want to explain, but that doesn't mean it's real. It just means that you're selecting it, and if you were not selecting it, then you wouldn't have noticed it. And that's fine. And to me, that can be a contribution to explaining how manifestation works. It's not at the expense of that. That is included in how manifestation works. But if we start saying that that's the only way of explaining the law of attraction or manifestation, then it invalidates law of attraction and manifestation. And this is what we're looking to filter out with the first decision. The problem is that the law of attraction as it is explained is that the explanation is reality will conform to your expectations and your beliefs. It will conform to your deepest held beliefs about reality. And so if you are just convinced that the law of attraction is not real and that everything is random, then as we explain it through the law of attraction, you will just get that randomness that you believe in, right? And if I were to say that to a materialist person might say, no, that's not it. It's just, it actually is random, and that's why I'm receiving randomness and perceiving randomness. So there's a sort of chasm that just cannot be crossed. You can't, like, all you can do is explain it from whatever position you're in. You can explain, like, I can explain materialism from a law of attraction standpoint, and I can explain the law of attraction from a materialist standpoint. Does this make sense? You can explain the other from wherever you are on either side of that chasm. And so my invitation for you now is, instead of, for a minute, trying to figure out which one is actually the case, just choose which one you want to operate from. And if you choose to operate from law of attraction, then let's continue. And if not, then discontinue. Let's talk about something else a little bit later. Good. So that's that. So now the third decision. So we've agreed that there's a connection. Okay. And then we've agreed that there's law of attraction and it's real. Okay, good. Now the third one is it an appropriate use of your time to create success, including the law of attraction in your outlook? And the reason why we would want to stop here and have a quick investigation is because there are actually reasons why you could believe in it and prefer not to use it. And I outlined this in a video that I released, I believe, in February of 2025, and it's called Avoid This Spiritual Trap. And it outlines a spiritual trap that I was deep in that I'm grateful to have come out of. I will cover it very quickly here, but if you're interested and if you're ensnared in this trap, then go check out that video because it'll help you get out of it. The trap, the spiritual trap is approaching the unfolding of your life's journey from an exclusively passive point of view. And this is an idea that I got either rightfully or wrongfully from Matt Kahn, as well as the Tao Te Ching, and a handful of other speakers that speak about the unfolding of your path as something that is automatic and pre-written, and the universe has a plan for you, and so forth. Where when you approach the creation of success and the unfolding of your life from a passive place, then your whole goal is to be as deeply and as completely surrendered as you possibly can, and almost in a state of waiting, which of course is really bad news. And you could upgrade this to say, okay, I'm waiting, but as I wait, I'm going to keep my house clean. I'm going to keep going to the gym. I'm going to keep making smart moves in my business. I'm going to keep eating healthy. I'm going to not consume bad things. I'm going to keep good company. So I'm keeping my my sword sharp and getting ready for war, so to speak. But it's still nevertheless a form of waiting. And I tried this out as thoroughly as I could. It's like it made sense to me as it was explained to me. But ultimately, I found that I needed to move back to the active form of spirituality, the active way of engaging with the unfolding of your potential, the creation of your life, which is I do it. I'm doing it. I expect somewhere along the way that even these two will be integrated into one, and that will be a fun video to make later, but that's just not where I'm at right now. Right now, I went from passive and now I'm in active. And so this video for you is if you're in an active phase. So it's funny, like I don't even know if anybody's watching this video anymore because I'm doing a lot of weeding out, right? Like, if you're listening to this still, you're in a very specific place for us to talk about the creation of success. And there's also another reason why you would consider it not a worthwhile use of your time to use the law of attraction to create success. And you might worry that the law of attraction is just, it is unrealistic and impractical, and it's not the correct way of going about things. Sorry, 1 second here. Right, okay. It's not the correct way of going about things. And we're going to touch on being practical and realistic. I will just say quickly before we do that, for me, for so much of my life until just a few days ago, I was extremely polarized around magical thinking versus being realistic and practical, where like whenever somebody would say, hey, Brent, you have to be realistic or practical, or if I have a coaching client and they say to themselves, I have to be practical about this, I would always cringe and bristle a little bit, where I would really want to keep my imagination open, and I would want you to keep your imagination open, and we should create from a place of a magical awareness, say, but when it's at the expense of being practical, that's no good. Good, so those are the three decisions. And so now we can talk about magical versus practical thinking and how they come together, and kind of what makes what we're about to get into so juicy. So when we talk about manifestation, I want to start by saying that I personally have had many profound, wonderful experiences with the law of attraction, and I imagine you have had at least one. You've had occasions where something happens, where something comes just in the way that you were thinking about it, with enough specificity, like it was exactly that brand of thing, or it cost exactly that dollar amount, where it's so unlikely for it to happen that to assume that it was just randomness, like it was just going to happen anyway, is slightly irresponsible and invalidating in a way that's just not wise. It's inappropriate and wrong to just brush it aside as happenstance or as randomness. And you can, if you are willing, as we discussed earlier with decision number 2, if you are willing to accept and kind of move through the world on this side of the chasm where the law of attraction is real, then you can have, there's really no upper limit on how many of these experiences you can have. You can have these incredible experiences. I remember once manifesting shoes. I needed a new pair of shoes and I didn't have the money for it. This was deep in our traveling phase. I had just come home from Chiang Mai and I was like visiting home for a little bit, and we spent all our money on the plane ticket. My shoes were worn out, and I remember just encountering a pair of shoes that were the correct size, the correct style. They were lined up just nicely. They were clean and good, and I just had shoes because I just asked the universe for them. I remember also a little bit later, we were looking for a place to live in Toronto. And again, we were low on money. We didn't have a big income, but we needed to move to Toronto so we could get our start. And I was asked, I said to my girlfriend, my now wife, Jessica, I want us to get a loft style studio apartment, and I want to pay $750 a month for it. And that's what I want. And you know, we looked and looked and didn't find anything. And then sure enough, I received a invitation from my friend whose mother had purchased a loft style studio apartment that they couldn't rent out just yet for certain reasons. It was a new build, and they suggested that we could pay that exact amount, $750 per month, to live there. So that was very cool. And so I'm saying this because these experiences are real and you can have them, but what I also noticed is that I couldn't exactly live off of them. For example, I noticed that I could manifest a pizza, like I could ask the universe for one and I could get it and that would be great. But it's not like I could make it into this automatic process, and it's not like I could just manifest, say, $1 million. Like there seemed to be certain boundaries on how far I was able to go. And I had to decide whether I had to figure out what is the nature of these limitations. Where are these limitations coming from? And one potential reason for these limitations is that there's like an actual speed limit, like an actual limitation on what you can manifest, which doesn't make any sense. It seems pretty arbitrary and kind of difficult to find. Or the other potential explanation is just how much I believe I can. Like, what is the actual outer boundary of my beliefs in terms of what I can receive? And this seems like a much more likely explanation. So we could talk about this, right? When it comes to manifesting something, and we're now entering the territory that I've really so much wanted to share with you here. When it comes to manifesting something, there is actually a practical and impractical way of even going about that, if you can imagine. Where, let's say, for example, you want a sandwich. You're sitting watching TV and you have an empty plate and you want a sandwich on that plate. There are a few ways that you could go about manifesting it. One would be to ask the universe for a sandwich to materialize in front of you on that plate, an extremely delicious one. And I am not saying that this isn't possible. My personal position is that it is possible. But what you would have to do is you would have to be in a headspace where that happening would not be a big deal. And if it happened, you wouldn't, like, despite having requested it a moment ago and it appears on your plate, you wouldn't just go crazy being like, oh my God, what is reality? Because if requesting something of the universe would cause you to feel like you're mentally unstable and you need to be put on medication because, you know, your understanding of reality is just gone overnight, then this is no good. And so we're not used to thinking of it this way, but the boundaries of your belief system, like what you believe is actually possible or not, grounds your sense of reality. Like if you don't have that, then you would just go nuts. There would be no way of orienting yourself in your life. So if you ask for something and it violates what you believe is actually possible, then and you receive it, then that would be a big problem. Nevertheless, what you could do is you could practice relaxing your beliefs around what's possible, around like materialization, and make that sandwich. But in the meantime, like how long is that going to take? That's going to take quite a long time depending on where you're starting from. So it might be a little bit more practical to have a medium ask of the universe. And the medium ask of the universe might be, I'm going to request that the universe bring me some, have somebody make a sandwich and bring it in for me without me having to ask for it. And that is actually a little bit more plausible. You can actually wrap your head around that, and maybe that would work. But I'll tell you, the easiest way to manifest a sandwich would be to get up and go make one. Now, if you're like me, then to hear that last option feels a little bit like a disillusionment, and it feels a little bit disappointing, and it feels like we are eliminating the magical element about life and the magical element about manifestation. But this is an immaturity. Because if you have a need for life to take the form of crazy miracles all the time, it's a rejection of, it's you playing partisan games. It's you playing picking and choosing with the different manifestation tools at your arsenal. And if you are like me, where you feel like you have been biased against the practical elements of the creation of something, the realistic elements of the creation of something, then this is you being partial, and this is you shooting yourself in the foot. Because by insisting that a sandwich actually materialize on your plate, this is a waste of time, and this is not using the full extent of your own power. And this is you putting obstacles on your own path. A nice way of viewing this is something that really makes me personally very happy, is to imagine that the difference between having a sandwich materialize on your plate and actually getting up to the kitchen to go make one is not a difference of practicality or being realistic whatsoever. In fact, what we call the practical, realistic realm is really a well-paved pathway of consensus reality. Because if I tell you that I materialized a sandwich, you would never believe it. Nobody would believe it. But if I told you that I got up and made a sandwich, that would be very believable. It fits in with everybody's worldview. And when there's a commonly held belief in the gestalt, like in our society and culture, then it's easy to travel along those grooved paths. They are well paved, they are well trodden, they are worn in. And so they're like super highways where you can get the thing that you're after. Another example is a fundraising example. I've mentioned many different times over the years about how I used to have a fundraising job in a prior life before I got into coaching. And I used manifestation all the time to get the donations that I needed for my different quotas. And I would often go into the day, I would pre-program the day, just in the same way I was suggesting earlier, that you go into a period of time with an intention behind it, where I'd say, okay, like I have, 3 times the daily quota already done. And so I don't need to worry about it at all. And so how shall I spend the day now that I have already achieved these things? This is what I'm saying to myself. And then I would do that, and I would imagine how I would hold myself. I imagine how I would breathe. I imagine how I would think. I would imagine how relaxed I'd be and what a good day I would have. And then frequently, my day would auto-populate that way. I would just get a series of easy donations. They'd come in, they're happy to come talk to me, they're happy to donate, no problems whatsoever, great uplifting conversations. And then after that, maybe I get some more donations if I want, but I'm just totally in the driver's seat about this. The thing that I was missing about this story that I told you, because this was a very powerful and illustrative thing and really indicative of the way the universe is in harmony with our intention, what I was discounting was the fact that if I were doing this fundraising in somebody's basement, in like some suburb somewhere, let's say, and they let me rent out their basement, then, and nobody's coming by to fundraise, it's not that I couldn't get any donations. Like there could be a miracle style manifestation where somebody wanders down and they find me and I talk to them and they donate, but I wouldn't be able to sustain that every day forever, because there's just no room, and there's just no way that I could imagine that happening. It would be far too much of a stretch for that to happen. There's something else I was going to say about that too. It'll come back to me. But yeah, so that is the idea here. So it's not about saying what is or isn't possible, but it's about the well-paved grooves that are there for you, these super highways that are available. Because my fundraising booth was set up in a very highly populated area, and so it became a super highway where I was able to manifest tons of money easily. And it was a practical and realistic place to put it. And that worked very well for me in the end. So we want to collapse the polarity that we have around magical and practical thinking. And we want to see the practical as the magical and the magical as the practical. This was what I was going to say, something along these lines, that these are not different things. And that which we would call a miracle, because like if I received a donation at a booth in somebody's basement, we would call that a miracle. But if I received a donation at this regular place in a mall or at a certain high densely occupied spot, and I got a donation there, we would not call that a miracle. But it would be a mistake. It would be a mistake to refer to one as the miracle or not the other. Do you see? Either they're both miracles or they're not miracles. And do you see the nature of this problem? If I get up and make a sandwich, is that a miracle or not? Because if it's not, then neither is it a miracle that a sandwich manifests on my plate. So and it's not like you have to choose, like it doesn't matter. Either they both are or they neither are. The point that I'm making is that the fact that you can intend for something and have that thing become real in the physical world, that's a miracle. And how it takes place is, there's no hierarchy. There it is. There it is. There's no hierarchy. There's no higher or lower. This is one of the first things in a course on miracles, something to the effect of no miracles are higher or lower than any other. It's just they're the same. They're of the same value. They come from the same magic. And so that's the blending, that's the depolarizing and the blending around the practical and the magical. Do you feel how fucking mature that is? Do you feel how grown up that is? And do you see how it's not a rejection of anything? It's not a rejection of being realistic, practical, and even like the whole scientific bit, like confirmation bias and subjective filtering, it's not a rejection of that either. We're looking at it as a whole thing. So now this leads us to the creation of success. And so what I'm going to start doing going into August, and this is my first time doing this, because up until now I've been polarized, towards this, against this. I'm biased towards this, against that. I'm trying to do everything the magical way and not the practical way, etc., etc. And there were even other times where I was like, okay, fine, there's no such thing as magical, whatever. I'm only going to do practical stuff. I'm gonna check the boxes. I'm gonna do SEO. I'm gonna do my marketing. I'm gonna make sure that I do all this practical, down-to-earth, business guru kind of stuff, for my business. But I'm not going to invoke any magic in it whatsoever. I'm not going to use any intention whatsoever. That doesn't work either. So it's a big, long sentence, but hopefully you're still with me. Now I'm blending the two together. And what does that mean to blend them together, practically speaking? Number one, it means that I have a daily manifestation practice. I'm telling you right now, my friend, if you're still watching, you're probably on board at least a little bit. Otherwise you would have left a long time ago. But it bears mentioning that anybody that has a regular manifestation practice, and we will get into the details of what that means, and you do it for days, it works. You look back on that, you look back on a time when you were manifesting consciously, and you will notice that it was working. And if for whatever reason it wasn't, then there would be some sort of psychological block that was preventing it from arising, and it would have instead arose in the form of a conflict or a quick success that quickly fizzles out for some reason that's really frustrating. But I have yet, and I give me your comments if you have any stories, I want to hear them. I have yet to hear a story about somebody who spent a lot of time manifesting something with sincerity and intention, and nothing happened as a result. This is a powerful practice that you ignore at your own peril. Do not gloss over the importance of a daily manifestation practice if it's your desire to change your reality into a different one. But at the same time, concurrently with that, we are also doing the practical shit. And we're not only manifesting, because that is a big mistake. And so the creation of success, how is success created? It's created also by doing the smartest, most practical, wisest, best thing that you can possibly do. And if you're like me, where you're prone to magical thinking and wanting things to just move only magically, then you run the risk of using this as a way of avoiding the work, the effort part. And as I often say on this channel, there is no bypassing the effort working part. The part where you have to be productive, the part where you have a schedule, a calendar, a plan, a sleep schedule, go to bed on time, wake up on time, exercise, eat nutritiously, do the stuff that you don't want to do, the work that makes you nervous or makes you uncomfortable. Make sure that you do that. Follow good, sound advice, and do the stuff that has made success for other people. In other words, follow the grooved paths. I almost want to be like, you idiot, because I'm talking to myself. Follow the grooved paths. Don't discount them just because they're grooved. Don't make it unnecessarily hard for yourself. And use the law of attraction to find the appropriate grooved paths so that you can turn them into your own superhighways. What I have noticed about people who are masters is that these are people who began almost always by following the grooved pathways until they no longer needed them. An example would be a master chef. Like, think of like a master chef where, they went through a whole bunch of schooling, and now they know how to, like, you could give them whatever's in your fridge, like some like soft carrots and beans and one egg and a hot dog, and they could make something beautiful with it, right? They no longer need the grooved pathways. Sorry, I'm just gonna let my cat escape 1 second here. They don't need the grooved pathways anymore because they've attained a certain amount of mastery, but they need them in the beginning, or they did need them in the beginning. Another one would be masterful leadership, where when you're a truly masterful leader, you can take a very shitty situation and alchemize it into a good one. You can make gold out of lead. This is absolutely possible, but only by attaining the mastery first. But if you're in a place like me, where it's time to create some serious goddamn success, like real success, then let's begin with the groove pathways, and let's also use the manifestation practice. So as promised, here are a few things that you can do to bring this to life. I'll be doing these right with you along the way. We'll be doing them together in no particular order. Accept this as a truism, that any idea that prevents you from your expansion is false. Any idea that prevents you from expanding is false. I said this in my recent video called Doom, something like Truth and Doom. And so I went deep into that. But you can know this just right off the bat, that if any reasons why you cannot create success are wrong, are you willing to know that now? Or do we need to double click on some of these reasons you have that success is not possible and refute them individually? If so, then double click them and refute them individually. Do whatever you have to do, but notice the ongoing theme, and then get on this higher track where you can just start discounting them completely without having to argue them, because it's a bit of a time suck. Be disciplined in your law of attraction practice. So just because we are employing magic doesn't mean that you can be lazy with it. And this is another way they blend in together. See how they integrate? So it's like, use magic, but be disciplined. Do it the same way you go to the gym. If you're doing it right, the practice of the law of attraction and manifestation is a mundane practice, like eating broccoli. Like it's earthy, it's repetitive, it's rote, it's mundane. Like you have to get rid of any bias you have against that kind of existence. Next one is seed new realities. This is, I used to offer a PDF on this. Comment if you want the PDF. It's called Seeding New Realities, and the basic idea behind it is to constantly be sending your imagination beyond your obstacles into that new reality. So if you haven't done this, this is you should already have a clear idea of the reality that you want to create for yourself. That needs to be done. And then as your law of attraction practice, keep sending your attention there. Go into that vision, occupy that vision, feel what it feels like, get the emotional quality of it. You don't have to spend your whole day there, but do it for at least 5 to 10 minutes every single day. Investigate your shadow around magic. What shadow do you have around magic? So in what way, like, especially if you're a person who's like, oh, like I'm skeptical, but like you make it as a point of pride, you make it into your personality, right? You're an atheist and so forth. This is totally fine, but if that's you, then you have to be extremely careful about where you are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. See, the problem, I didn't mention this in the beginning, but the problem with the law of attraction is that it is distinctly counter-scientific in that you have to believe first and receive evidence second. And the scientific method is evidence first and then the belief or the theory or the worldview. And so my invitation to you is never to just accept what I'm saying. And I'll say it every single time. It's not about that. I'm not saying like something comes out of my mouth and you just believe it, please, as a way of being nice to me. What I'm saying is that there are some things where it's appropriate to go evidence first and then conclusion second. And then there are other situations where it's better to go conclusion first, belief first, and then evidence follows that. And if you are against that, if that makes you bristle for any reason, do science, do meta science on that. Like, just give yourself permission for a week to reverse the scientific method and see what you get and see if you like it. Like, if you're truly a skeptic, then you will also be skeptical of the scientific method. Is this fair enough? I guess I'm speeding up a little bit so that this doesn't go on too long, but I'm gonna, slow it down. Investigate your shadow around the practical. So just in the same way that you're investigating your shadow around magic, investigate your shadow about practical, realistic reality in the way that I was explaining before. Like if you're unwilling for life to be practical or mundane or boring or down to earth, like if you resist that kind of stuff, then grow up like I did. Our goal here is always to become depolarized, because that is how we become more mature. Please comment about, I really want to know, this isn't just a bid for comments, I really want to know how important maturity is to you. Like if I said, here's like a way to make yourself more mature, like how much do you care on a scale of 1 to 10? Please let me know. Wow, okay, I think we're there. All right, really enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the links below, my friend, if you're interested in my one-on-one practice. It only gets better from there. There's a free PDF and my monthly newsletter. You want to opt in to get that. There's also a link for that below. Subscribe if you haven't, please and thank you. Hit like if you haven't already, please and thank you. Love you very much. See you on the next one.